In this video, I'll show you how to review, edit, and print or export a customer quote. I'll show you how to edit the various quote settings to change the way the information is displayed in the quote. Before you create a customer quote, you need to ensure your estimate is complete. Also, check that you've filled out all of the details on the project details screen. The client and site address details entered here will appear on the customer quote. Click Quotes on the Project Explorer to navigate to the list of quotes. The Estimate Completion Checker dialog box pops up, prompting you to check your estimate. The traffic lights on the left highlight any potential issues with the estimate. Click along the tabs and check whether there are any errors or omissions in your estimate. On the estimating calculators used within the Estimate tab, the Notes column describes any potential error or omission. If you think you may have missed an item, you can click to open the estimating calculator or open the drawing to add the item. If you're happy that the element is complete, tick the completed tick box. Check whether there are any elements you've omitted completely using the Commonly Used Estimating Calculators tab. Finally, check if there are any estimating calculators you need to update on the Estimating Calculators name tab. Once you've finished working through the checklist, click Close. Before you create a quote, it's a good idea to take a data snapshot. A data snapshot captures and saves the data in your estimate, so that if you subsequently make any changes to it, you can always revert to the data used to create the quote. It's good practice to take a data snapshot each time you intend to print out or export a quote. To take a data snapshot, simply click the Save Data Snapshot button. A dialog box will pop up telling you that the snapshot has been saved. Click OK. You can then subsequently find and select the data snapshot from the Data to Use drop-down box. It'll show today's date. Out of the box, you'll find a range of quote templates which show varying levels of detail. The abbreviated customer quotes show less information than the customer quotes. There are quote templates which show only a breakdown of material costs, and some which also show labour and plant costs. There are versions with and without resource quantities. There are also unpriced schedules, which you might find useful to give to labourers on site. To open a quote template, double-click on it on the main window. Let's take a look at the customer quote with materials, quantities and costs by build phase, which is a fairly detailed quote, as the name suggests. You're now looking at a preview of the quote. The job name and client and site address details appear automatically on the cover page. You can import your company logo to appear at the bottom of the cover page. I'll show you how shortly. Scrolling down, you'll see that the quote includes a cover letter with default text. Of course, you can edit this to reflect your own style and way of working. I'll show you how to edit the text in a moment. Scrolling down further, you'll see that this quote is broken down into build phases. Each build phase has a description, which can also be edited. If we take a look at the footings, you'll see that this quote template includes line-by-line quantities and costs for materials. It shows subtotals for materials, labour and plant for each build phase. At the end of the quote, you'll find a summary of the costs. And you'll also find acceptance forms. Finally, there's a space to insert your terms and conditions. You can edit most aspects of the quote and control the level of detail included. To customise the quote, click the Edit button on the Quote tab. Click Content on the left-hand menu. From here, you can decide whether to include a cover page, letter, breakdown of costs and so on. By clicking the different content options on the left-hand menu, you can edit and customise the content of the quote. Click Cover Page. Tick the tick box to include your company logo on the cover page. The first time you tick the Include Logo box, a message will pop up asking if you want to set the company logo. Click Yes. Locate the company logo on your computer. It'll need to be saved as an image file, such as a bitmap, JPEG or GIF. Click on the file to select it, and then click Open. Click Yes to save your company logo so it's available for use in other projects. You'll see a preview of the company logo. You can edit the logo size and position from the bottom margin using the boxes here. Now click Letter. Here you can edit the text in the cover letter. You can either type directly into the box, or if you have your own standard letter which you'd prefer to use, you can copy and paste it into the text box. To paste the letter into the box, hold down the Ctrl and V keys on your keyboard. Click Summary. From here you can control whether the group subtotals are included in the summary at the end of the quote. Click Terms and Conditions. You can copy and paste your terms and conditions into this box. As with the letter, you'll need to hold down the Ctrl and V keys on your keyboard to paste a section of text from a Word document. Now click Breakdown on the left-hand menu. The breakdown settings determine how the quote is itemised. Click Grouping. In the Grouping drop-down box, you'll see that you can group the items by build phase, specification, or specification category. If you have the Professional QS edition of BuildingWorks, you can also group the quote by NRM elements or work sections. The work section grouping breaks the quote down into trade-based tasks such as masonry, carpentry, plastering, and so on. The specification option organises the quote by estimating calculator. So if you had a quote with different specifications of wall, for example some with thicker insulation, you'd be able to see each different wall specification separately. In contrast, the build phase grouping would group all wall specifications together under masonry shell. The specification category option organises the quote by the categories you find when selecting an element from the estimating or architectural drop-down menus. So if you had a quote with different wall types, for example brick and block cavity walls and rendered block walls, you'd be able to see each different wall type separately. The standard grouping, which breaks the quote down by build phase, is appropriate for most jobs. Assuming you're happy to display the quote by build phase, you can then decide whether to show build phase images and descriptions for each build phase. You can also decide whether to show total costs for each build phase. Now click the Build Phases option on the left-hand menu. Click onto the different build phases. You'll see that each build phase has a description and image. You can edit the build phase text by typing into the box, and should you wish to, you can also select an alternative image by clicking the Image button. Click onto Default Settings. From here you can decide whether to show what each resource is used for. You can decide whether to show branded material descriptions or more customer-friendly unbranded material descriptions. By clicking Material Settings, you can decide whether to show subtotals for the materials. There are similar options in the labour and plant settings. Note that if you untick Show Subtotal, the items are still included in the total estimate cost, but the subtotals for each build phase will be removed from the quote. Click Template on the left-hand menu. The template settings control the layout and formatting of your quote. From Page Setup, you can set the page size, orientation and margins. Click Letterhead. In the same way as you imported your company logo, you can import a company letterhead to appear in the quote letter. Click Font Styles to change the font styles, and click Header and Footer to select which information appears on the header and footer. Finally, click VAT on the left-hand menu. From here you can set the VAT to a percentage or fixed rate, and then enter the percentage or fixed amount as appropriate. The default setting is a VAT percentage of 20%. Before you spend a lot of time changing the quote settings, you might find it quicker to simply select a different quote template. Click Cancel to close the Edit Quote window. Then click Close Print Preview. If you want to show much less detail in your quote, select one of the abbreviated options, such as the Abbreviated Customer Quote by Build Phase. Remember to double-click on the template to open it. You can also select a different quote template from the Project Explorer. The Abbreviated Customer Quote doesn't show the breakdown of materials and labour and associated quantities and costs. It does, however, show subtotals for materials, labour and plant for each build phase. If you spend some time setting up a quote and want to save it to use in future projects, press the Save to Library button on the Quote tab. The Save Quote to Library dialog box pops up. Select the Save as New Quote option, and then type in a name for the new quote. BuildingWorks provides a suggested name, but you can of course give it a name which is meaningful to you. Tick the Keep Build Phase Images, Descriptions and Filters options if you want to save these settings, then click OK. Once you're happy with the quote, you can simply print or export it, ready to email to your client. If you want to print the quote, click the Print button. In the Print dialog box, select the printer you want to use, enter the number of copies you want, and then click OK. You can also export your quote by clicking the Export button on the Quote tab and selecting a file type from the drop-down menu. For example, you might want to export the quote as a PDF to send to your client. Click on the appropriate file type, check you're happy with the file name and location, and then click Save. You can then open the file in the folder where you saved it, or attach the file to an email. For now, click Close Print Preview. You can reset a quote to its original settings at any point by deleting it and adding it from the library. Click on the quote and click the Delete button. A dialog box pops up asking if you're sure you want to delete the quote. Click Yes, you're only deleting it from this job. Then click the Import from Library button. Select the quote you want to import and click OK. The quote will then appear in your project. Over to you. Once the estimate is complete and you've checked the project details are complete, navigate to Quotes on the Project Explorer. Work your way through the estimate completion checker if necessary, then double-click on a quote template to open it. Press the Edit button on the Quote tab to edit the content, breakdown and layout of the quote. Add your company logo and letterhead and edit the quote text from here. Then print or export your quote by clicking the respective buttons on the Quote tab.